Streaming services are going animation crazy lately, hoping to find the next big thing or maybe rebooting an already established property. We've got some of that here too. We're going to talk about 7 brand new animated series on streaming networks right now. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. This is an all-animated special. Going to talk about 7 new shows for kids and adults alike. There's a lot of variety here with these programs, some of them based on existing properties and a couple of them of the brand new variety. But before we get into that, I do want to welcome you to Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do TV news and reviews every week, and usually we mix it up a little bit more than just sort of one topic, but every couple of months there's enough sort of out in the same style or the same genre that we're just going to tackle it all. So we're going to do that now, and as a result, I'm going to sort of blow by the news this week. We'll get back with the TV news next week. But let's dive into all 7 of these shows. And like I said, they're all on streaming services, so you can get them if you subscribe to that specific service. We're going to start with something on Amazon Prime. And this is actually a spin-off of something that they already have that's very popular, The Boys. This is called The Boys Presents Diabolical, and this is an animated short-form program. These are all around 14 or 15 minutes, and they're all sort of in the universe of The Boys, but not necessarily dealing with characters from that program. Some of these do have a couple of the characters from the show, and they are voicing themselves in that vein. But of these 8 episodes, I think maybe only 2 of them are featuring actual members from the Boys crew. But they've tapped a lot of famous people here to write some of these episodes, including Seth Rogen. Awkwafina does one of them. Ilana Glazer from Broad City. Who else? Aisha Tyler, Andy Samberg. So, yeah, a lot of pretty famous people jumping on here. And each episode is in a completely different style of animation, which is very interesting. I don't think it's, the first time something like that's been done. I always think about Bob's Burgers. Years ago, they had this, I think it was like a contest or something, where every 30 seconds or something, they would change the animation style. And so we ended up with 25, 30 different animation styles throughout the course of the episode. And it was really cool and really fun to watch. And this is fairly similar. Each episode takes a different style of animation. You've got like the 1990s, like Animaniacs, Fox Afternoon kind of thing. We've got one that's like more French comic book style. One is taken directly basically from the style of the Boys graphic novels. So some interesting stuff there. And it's pretty interesting, but it is an anthology. So like a lot of anthology programs, the degree of, not everything's going to be a complete winner. There's going to be some duds probably in the mix. And here, yes, I wouldn't say there's any duds, but there's a couple that I could maybe have done without and maybe replaced it with something. But there's a few that shine really bright as well. One nice thing is, even though it does connect to the world of The Boys, I don't think you have to necessarily watch The Boys to understand it, because most of it is not characters from that show anyway. It's just sort of in that same universe. But if you are a big fan of The Boys and you don't watch these, I don't think you're going to really miss anything that way either. Because other than, like I said, the couple that connect directly with characters from The Boys, I don't think any of the stuff, even including that, is going to really like port over to the new season or anything. This is more of just sort of a stop in the road. Okay, I know you're waiting for, the next season of The Boys, so we'll give you this in the meantime. And because they're so short, it's really easy to digest. You can watch all 8 of these in less than like an hour and 45 minutes, something like that. So, they're all pretty bite-sized. My biggest gripe with it really is that a lot of it is just gore for gore's sake. We're really going all out with the violence, and I get that the boys program is like that too, but because we know those characters and stuff, they're also building the characters as we go. I don't know. It just seems a little more artificial, I guess, here, because these are characters we don't know, we're never going to hear from again. So let's just torture, X, Y, and Z and be done with it. I'd like a little more with the stories. But I do think it's a cool idea. I love that the animation's different with everything, and I like that, famous people, for the most part, wrote these episodes. None of them are that similar, other than sort of the torture and the violence and the gore aspect of it. In that respect, I think it's very original. But I will give The Boys Presents Diabolical with a B+. Up next, I cheated on a B, but I think it's original enough. We can put it up a little bit. Up next is over on Disney Plus, The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. This is a reboot and really continuation of the famous early 2000s series, The Proud Family. And this basically, a lot of the same voice cast is here. Penny Proud, for example, voiced by Kyla Pratt, just like it was 20 years ago. But she plays this 14-year-old girl, Penny, and this is the adventures of her and her family as they navigate lives in the 2020s. And much like The Simpsons, even though the characters themselves have not aged up, they've aged up the timeline. We're talking about a lot more, kind of contemporary things, current things. My biggest issue, well, before I fall into line with my review here, I will say that I'm not that familiar with the original Proud Family. The early 2000s is a bit of a void in my children's programming. I was working a lot of hours because I always work a lot of hours, but, at that point I was fresh out of college, so really working a lot, and my sort of TV time was either prime time, catching up on those shows, or late night talk shows. I didn't really watch a lot of, daytime shows or children's programming. So a lot of that stuff, it sort of fell by the wayside with me. And then once my nephews were born in like the mid 2000s, then, I started sort of watching some of those again so I could chat with them about them or whatever. But so this whole kind of era of Disney Channel, I'm not that familiar with, but I do know about the Proud Family, that it is a huge touchstone in African American culture. This was huge for the Black community, for really one of the first times ever, sort of seeing themselves in just a regular everyday kids cartoon. And Fat Albert did it certainly, 30 years earlier, but those kids honestly were, kind of poor, and, this was, a middle class Black family doing very well, and having everyday adventures, and that sort of thing, as far as I am aware of the original program. So this new one is actually quite frustrating in that regard. And like I said, most of the original cast does return here. There's a few replacements, but all the characters, at least from what I read, are in tow. But they updated the look of the animation a little bit, and they've always been sort of oddly animated. They didn't look like anybody else, on a cartoon at that point. And certainly, it was more than the color of their skin. It was the style of the animation. It was very different. And this one does not really look very good. I hate to say it, but I don't think the characters are drawn particularly well. And the voice acting's fine. I don't mind that necessarily, but this does seem to sort of be a case of, okay, let's update something that is beloved and sort of just tick all these boxes of like, okay, well, now we have to have, this kind of person and this person that checks this box. And a lot of reboots do that. I was sort of rallying against that in the Head of the Class reboot for HBO Max. And there's a lot of current day references in this show, and actually surprisingly a lot of older references too, from like the 90s that kids would not be talking about now. So it's sort of an odd mix in that way. Now, again, not being familiar with the original Proud Family, I don't know how they were with the pop culture stuff. I don't know if they were very, sort of, they make a lot of jokes about it. I don't know. But this to me dates this program almost immediately, and I feel like the original, from its reputation, is a little more evergreen, and maybe that is because they sort of shied away from some of these topical references. That is something that sort of put me off with this one. But in addition, the theme song, I did know the theme song because it was done by Beyonce, and I think Solange Knowles was part of it as well. And the theme song to this is not that good. It does not give you the vibe that you're about to see a fun, kind of zany comedy show with this crazy family. It's a little more dour, where I feel like the original one was a little more upbeat and sort of set the tone of the show a little more. I did get a few laughs from this, but not many. And because of the animation not being something that I particularly cared for either, there wasn't a ton for me to love about this show. And I feel bad saying it because I know the original is so highly revered, but I feel like that happens a lot with these kind of reboots. So for me, this was not that great of a show. The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I'm going to give it a D+. Up next, we're going to talk about Big Nate. And this is on Paramount Plus, and this is based on a popular book series. I am well aware of these books. My one nephew really loves them, and they're sort of in the vein a little bit of like a Diary of a Wimpy Kid sort of thing. A little bit maybe with the animation style, but more just the idea of these characters. And this basically follows the adventures of Nate Wright, who is voiced by Ben Giraud here. He is in 6th grade, and basically he's, kind of incompetent, but he has a great spirit. He has a good heart, and, he wants to sort of do the right thing. But he has issues with the school authority figures, including some of the teachers. Dove Cameron is part of this show. Charlie Schlatter, who was the old Ferris Bueller on the Ferris Bueller TV show. A lot of regular voice acting people are in this. I thought this was really, really funny. I saw the first couple episodes of this, and this, like a lot of the Nickelodeon and Disney Channel shows, go in the sort of 15-minute range, makes, 2 15-minute episodes makes up a half hour. And we see that here. This was really, really funny, sharp-witted. I can see watching a whole lot of these and sort of being amused by them. I can't remember if I read my nephew one of these Big Nate books or if I've just seen them around, like in his room and stuff. Because I did used to read to him a few years ago, but I know that the character is beloved, and here is an example of, I think they did this show right. I think these kids are funny, and you could sort of, they're a little bit, volatile with the teachers, and it's in that sort of way that when I was growing up, I used to watch, Alvin and the Chipmunks be sort of rambunctious and that sort of thing. So I enjoyed Big Nate. This is probably my favorite show of the week. So I'm going to leave that with an A-. Up next, we've got The Cuphead Show. This is on Netflix, and this is based on a popular video game called Cuphead. And this is in production with King Features Syndicate, which has been around for maybe over 100 years. They do a lot of the comic strips, and they go back, to the early 1900s, I think. And so I don't know exactly what the premise of the game is, but I know that it looks like these old cartoons from the 20s and 30s and 40s before really the more, effortless looking style of your Bugs Bunnies and Tom and Jerry's and Mickey Mouse. I mean, this dates before that. We're talking like Betty Boop era, the Alice comedies with Walt Disney from the 20s, like those kind of things. And yes, a little bit of maybe like Steamboat Mickey kind of thing, or Steamboat Willie, whatever it's called. So this features Cuphead and his brother Mugman. And the look of it is very much that style. It really is reminiscent, and I am a fan of classic animation and comic strips really from that era. But yeah, I mean, this looks like it would be right out of the 1920s, the 1930s. And this is colorized, so maybe more 30s, I guess, than 20s perhaps. Um, but the attention to detail that is going into making these is astounding. Everything from the way that the trees move and the way people walk and the way the notes, the exact look of the notes when a character's whistling or something. Every last detail is taken care of in the look of this show. However, where it's lacking is the storylines. Now, I will admit, as a fan of this early style of animation, yes, there were a lot of times where the plots were pretty threadbare. It was Mickey and the gang going to the old barn dance, and they're all just playing instruments and, whistling the tunes and pairing off with their girlfriends and whatever. That was a whole thing, that was the episode. So I will say it's a little bit more in depth than that, but compared to a cartoon show that we see now, it's definitely lacking, and I'm not sure how kids are going to feel about that. Now, if they play the game, and I don't know if this is like one of these super violent games, so maybe little kids don't even play it, but I would think kids of the game would sort of like this because it looks exactly like the games do. And I know I never played it. I did say that, but I've seen what it looks like, and I'm interested in any kind of thing with like classic animation. My nephew does play a game called Bendy, or I don't know if that's the name of it, but that's the star of it, and he looks like he's right out of the Betty Boop cartoons or whatever. He works at like the inking plant, and this is like sort of similar, I feel like, but I just wish the plots were there because the animation is so painstakingly, homage to those classic cartoons. I just wish there was more story there. Not that there's none, but it's just lacking in that department for sure. So, unfortunately, I'm gonna leave the Cuphead Show with a B minus. I really wanted to like it a little bit more than that based on my love of classic animation. Let's talk next about the Legend of Vox Machina, and this is back on Amazon Prime, and it is from this, I guess, podcast or video series or whatever called Critical Role, which is basically people playing Dungeons and Dragons. This is from the first season, the first campaign that Critical Role did. And so we have basically the story that they did in that series of episodes or whatever you want to call it come to life. And this was a Kickstarter thing. People that watch Critical Role, I guess, were into this and said, yes, we want to see this, come to life through animation and with these voice actors that played the game, doing the voices and all of that sort of stuff. And so 10 of the 12 episodes were completely funded by Kickstarter in 2019. So it's kind of cool. So we are set in this country called Exandria, or maybe it's more than a country, I don't know, but this is basically the way that the story went in that first season of Critical Role is how this story is going to progress with all the different people. Now, I played some D&D about 2 years ago. During the pandemic, I finally said, you know what, I've got a little bit of free time now that I'm not working so much, because some of my jobs were temporarily closed. So, okay, people had been trying to get me for years to play Dungeons and Dragons, so I finally gave in and said, all right, that's fine. Let's play. And to be honest, it is not for me. I had a few, fun experiences with it, but I don't really like the long form, programming of it. And the role playing itself, I found hard to get into, which is weird because I did improv in college, so it's not like I'm weird about taking on different roles or whatever. But I just kept wanting to do the fights and let's roll and see if we're gonna beat this demon or whatever. So I was a little skeptical about this one going into it and thinking, okay, well, maybe this is just for the D&D players in our lives. And to be honest, I think they will be the ones that most enjoy it, especially anybody that actually watched Critical Role or listened to it or whatever you do. I think they will be the ones who are most pleased with this. But I will say I was shocked at how much I actually did kind of enjoy what was going on. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but I got a lot of laughs from it. Some of these, characters are a bit snarky and sort of, I mean, it reminds me of a lot of these shows that sort of take place in these towns with mercenaries and whatever, maybe a little bit of, Star Wars kind of stuff in there. And, I was getting to know the characters a little bit. I don't think it's something that I'm going to finish watching. But for somebody who doesn't really like D&D and doesn't really like playing it that much, I found myself actually pretty into this show and the characters within. So, do they take the city in the end? I don't know. I assume so, probably, but who's to say? I probably won't finish watching. But I definitely liked it more than I thought I was going to. So I'm going to leave The Legend of Vox Machina with a B+. All right, next we've got Doomlands, and this is over on the Roku channel. Yeah, so Roku is really starting to get, hot and heavy with their originals. Of course, they bought the entire Quibi library. So they have all of those originals on there now. But the only thing I've ever really reviewed from there for this show is the Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist Christmas movie that they did back in December. But I know they have other shows in that. I've just never really tackled them. But I saw they had a new animated show. It is listed as, what did they say it was? It's like Star Wars meets Mad Max meets Cheers. And I thought, okay, well, that's certainly mildly interesting, if nothing else. So, okay, I'll give it a go. And much like the Quibi shows, these are like 11 to 12 minute episodes. They're very short. I think Quibi's thing was 10 minutes or less, so it's not quite as short as that, but it's about akin to The Boys Diabolical, I guess. But yeah, indeed, this takes place in a roving bar, basically, across the desert in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So you've got your Mad Max, and then the bar part, you've got Cheers, and then Star Wars, you've got the Cantina, and they basically have this huge vehicle that looks a lot like, some things that we've seen before in some, like 70s and 80s sci-fi shows, like the Ark 2, for example, if you're familiar with that at all. But animation-wise, it looks kind of like Rick and Morty and that sort of thing, which I get it is, the popular thing these days. I can't say this show is, that original. It's your typical, like, adult animated, okay, let's curse a lot, and let's, tell a lot of sex jokes, and those will be the punchlines. It's like, okay, well, we need something a little bit better written than that. But luckily, we do actually get some interesting characters here. And as we go along, we get to know them a little bit more, and I kind of dig them. So, I'm curious to see what the future of the Roku channel holds, because it's free. You don't pay to subscribe to it, so I'm not exactly, I mean, I guess they do run commercials. I'm trying to think if there were commercials in this, though, because like I said, it was only 11 or 12 minutes. I'm pretty sure I had to watch a commercial going into the episode, but during it, I don't know. I think it ran straight through. But in any event, whatever. I'm curious to see where sort of the future of Roku programming with their originals is. But to be honest, this is definitely better than a lot of the adult animated series that come down the pike that just sort of have sex jokes and cursing as their punchlines. This actually does have some interesting characters. They're a bit stock. I mean, I wouldn't say they're original, but they are interesting nonetheless. So I give Doomlands a B-. And then we close with a show over on Apple TV. And look, I'm going to make this one quick because it's for little kids. And I sort of said, about a year ago, I'm not going to do the like preschool shows anymore. But I saw this and I was like, all right, well, I'm doing an entire animated review show, so why not? This is called Pretzel and the Puppies. And the other reason I wanted to do it is because Mark Duplass, the actor from The Morning Show, also on Apple TV, and many other things. He's been in a ton of great independent movies and stuff. He voices the titular character, so I thought, all right, well, I'll give this a go. And plus, Apple TV I think has the best children's programming, and I've said this many times, but everything I review there for kids, both like little kids and, a little bit older children, like 7+ kind of thing. They're always like really good. So this is based on a book. And this is the other reason. I'm not familiar with this book, but it's from Margaret Ray, who, along with her husband, created Curious George. So, this has a bit of a lineage. The book dates back to the 40s, and it was reprinted in, I think, the 90s or something. But in any event, this is, your typical cutesy little kids show. It's about these dachshunds, and they're all adorable. And in the first episode, they want to, paint a mural on the wall. So they figure out, okay, we need to vote and figure out how to do that. And it was very cute, and everything about this is super cute. The voice acting, though, actually is where I didn't actually like it. I like Mark Duplass a lot, and I don't know who else necessarily is in this show, but the voice acting to me actually did leave a little bit to be desired, which is surprising. His voice I recognize just from watching him in all the different things, but I don't know. I don't know if he felt like he has too strong of a voice, so he was sort of dialing it back, but it felt like a sort of restrained performance, and a little bit of sort of like a soft-spoken one, but this dog is supposed to be sort of boisterous, and I wasn't quite feeling that from that dog, so that was kind of a bummer, I have to admit. But anyway, the show itself is very cute, and like all Apple TV shows, it's certainly worth watching, at least all Apple TV children's shows. I don't think I've given any of them a negative review yet, but Stillwater is on there. That's like been my favorite. But there's a lot of really good ones. Doug Unplugs is one. And actually, the Harriet the Spy one, I think, was pretty average. That might have been like a C or a C+. But anyway, I'm going to give Pretzel and the Puppies a B. So that will do it. Next week, we are back to the regular slate of live action shows, and there's a ton that I haven't gotten to yet because I'm really trying to catch up on my 2021 films before the Oscars in a couple of weeks from this recording. So soon enough, we will get to all of the new live action shows as well. But I thought, there's so many animated shows going on right now. Let's just do a whole episode dedicated to that. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.